Hey everybody. Here's another, I'm going to cover a second episode here on this topic. This one's going to get off more of the topic of the incident itself, and I'm going to be covering a little bit more of media critique. Because in an incident like this, mainstream media, hey, it's talking about us. The people in the actual news businesses and the people in the actual websites that talk about real world events, they start talking about our fandom. And I think that when it comes to media coverage and stuff like that, I think it's very important to provide critique. And this not only goes for intra-fandom stuff like this kind of thing, but also in a general sense. So, heck, I like critiquing the media, so let's go about doing it, I suppose. So there's definitely good. Like the good thing about all this is that everyone who's covered the fandom, everyone who's covered this incident, has been very respectful of the fandom. Has been very, absolutely 100%. They didn't bring up any unsavory topics. They didn't bring in these old definitions. They didn't even bring up that topic. They just talked about the topic at hand, and they talked about its effects on the community, on the local communities, which is great. That's awesome. It's a good thing. There were some little things that I did pick up on that may need to be addressed in the future, covering such incidences. And this is definitely where you can tell the difference between the professionals and the amateur hour. And because people will go, well, news is news, you can get it anywhere, you can get it anywhere and do anything. But in this case, you could tell, and in this big difference. It's very subtle, but it's very important, and this is the reason it has to be covered. Because I've seen this happen a few times when, some sort of unsavory incident occurred that was covered by mainstream, and then, ended up having negative consequences because of it, or just seemed to be just like, did they really just do that? Did they really just do that? And so it's very subtle, but it's very important. And that is, if you're going to post pictures on a news article, for the love of everything, make sure that the pictures in your thing are directly related to the incident at hand. Directly. Not like, oh, it's few degrees removed from it, but it's similar. It's something I'm talking about. I'm just talking about it at glance in the article. No, if the picture has nothing to do with what the main title and what the main thing of the article is about, don't post it. Don't picture it there. Pick something else. And the reason I say this, and it's so very important, I'll go with the good example first. The Los Angeles Times did an article on this incident, and they had a picture of the house in which it happened. They had just a picture of the front of the house with their friend sitting on it. They might have gotten the picture from, somewhere in the family or something or other. They somehow dug up that picture, and they got that picture, and they used that picture. That picture is great because that picture, it's just the house. Sure, it doesn't show what the furry fandom is, but the furry fandom is not the thing that you're covering here. The thing you're covering here is the murder, and the murder that took place at that particular residency. So having a picture of that residency and going, well, we're not going to have pictures of random furries in here, is excellent. It's what you should do, because no furry wants to be tied with this thing. You don't want... And so here's where I go into the negative. There was a handful of articles from news blog-ish things, for more bloggy news sources that weren't professional, or at least they don't understand the psychological effects and impacts of placing pictures with certain words and the impacts that it has. Because it's like they pictured this random SoCal furry in this blue fursuit, and that was their main headline photo on this thing about this furry incident, effect. It's like, oh God, why? Here's the thing, guys. Let's get unprofessional here for a moment. So my foot ruined the magic. Anyways, here, let's get unprofessional here for a minute, and let me talk in plain language. How would you feel if a murder occurred in your community, in your small town, let's say, and in order to kind of sell this story, they're like, well, in this small town, murders never happen. And then what you do is you talk about the murder in the article, but the picture you have on the leading your article is just of a random denizen, a random civilian from that small town. Just anyone in particular, just standing in front of the town sign or something. You've just subconsciously tied that individual with the incident in this case. Knowingly or unknowingly. Which probably more the later, I'm thinking. Because it's like, oh, well, this picture's about, the story's about the furry fandom. No, it's not. It's about a murder that took place. The story has nothing, it's just that it happens to be that the people who are victims and perpetrators in this particular instance was within the fandom. And I talked a lot about that on the first video. But the fandom is not the frontliner here. The fursuits, the dancing, the anthrocons, the conventions, they are not the frontliners here. They are not the things that you should be really talking about fully. Now, if you want to talk about them in the text and say, well, this is kind of, this fandom has a convention and stuff like that, this is what they're known for, and blah, 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 that's fine. Because, you know, if you're trying to introduce what a furry is, because that happens to be what what the victims were in part of the community, sure. Just don't put a picture of Anthrocon, like, logos or anything on the article, which didn't happen, didn't go that far. But in the same token, in the same thought process, don't put a picture of a random fursuiter on this. I mean, what if you posted a picture of me on that article? People are gonna think, this guy got killed, or this guy's a murderer. It's like, I have nothing to do with the incident in hand. And the person who's in that fursuit, which, by the way, the article I'm going to link to, which is Exhibit B, is a blue fursuiter. And it's like, that blue fursuiter now, for the rest of their days, has to go, oh, well, I tied you with you were on that article about that murder. And she's like, she's like, oh, God, why? You don't take a picture of a random person and put it on an article about something they have nothing to do with. Or put a video of people getting together at a thing. This is not about us right now. This incident is not about the fandom. It's about these 4 individuals who are caught up in this horrible incident. And that is what the story is. That is what the story should be, and you shouldn't expand it to that. Now, going into another little topic, at the very least, and this is going to be a rant, all right? At the very least, at the very least that we didn't have the mainstream media covering it because it happened on the same week as the presidential debate. And thank Lord for that. Thank Lord that the news industry is so tied up in this election right now that we don't have people like the frickin' Joe Morning Show, the Morning Joe show covering this topic, because the last time we had a tragedy like this in the fandom and they covered that topic, they had beyond an Aleppo moment. All right, let's talk about Aleppo moments here. So I'm gonna kind of jump in a secondary topic into this thing for sort of bonus material, I suppose. So recently, President candidate Gary Johnson had his Aleppo moment. Now, if you don't know what the Aleppo moment is he went in and he was talking on the Morning Joe show with the guys there, and they go, "What are you gonna," like out of nowhere? One guy goes, "What are you gonna do about Aleppo?" And he goes, "What's Aleppo?" And he goes, "You're kidding. It's the city in Syria where all this violent stuff is occurring." And he's like, oh, Aleppo, yeah, of course. And then he gets back on topic. So he didn't know what the capital of the place was. He didn't know the geography of the place. But he knew, as soon as they mentioned Syria, it's like, oh, I know what you're talking about. So they're like, well, he's too ignorant to be president. He's too ignorant to be things. I would take that more seriously if it didn't come from a show that 2 years ago, when covering an incident that they knew that there was violence involved, that there was a gas incident involved, they asked the camera, she's like, "What's a furry?" Like in 2014, somebody in the professional news media goes, "What's a furry?" And this is the one critiquing about things that are happening in foreign places. It's like, you don't know what's going on in foreign places? You don't know what's going on in places outside this country? That critique becomes a little less pointed when we have news people who don't even know what's happening in their own backyards, who don't even know the cultures within their own countries. Within, that there's this big convention that happens in Pittsburgh every year. That there's this big convention that happens in Rosemont, Chicago every year. That they're completely oblivious to that, yet they're making important decisions. Okay, now I'm expanding a little bit too far, I suppose. But what I'm saying is that you knew when you were asking that question, and you knew when you were behaving as you did, that there was an incident in which 19 people were hospitalized because of a chlorine gas attack. You knew that there was a violent incident, and you had an ignorant moment, and you went, what's a furry? And then you had a chuckle and a laugh, and you were laughing about the furry, and you were putting the furry thing ahead of what this incident was. So that's my tie-in with this, is that the mainstream, whether they be the mainstream or a blogger or whatever, when you're talking about a topic, be sure that the topic always comes first. The topic in which you're discussing always comes first. And the secondary thing about this, the secondary thing is just a secondary thing. You should treat it as if we weren't wearing this at all. You should treat it as if this were off. If you were to treat something differently with the hat off than you were on, that's all we want. Now, we're very much, a jokey thing. We very much don't take ourselves too seriously, because you can't take me too seriously because I'm in a suit. You know what I mean? I'm in a suit. This suit. But you could trust me because I'm in this suit. All right? So we don't take ourselves too seriously. We're very fun-loving, and we're very, but you gotta treat it just as, you gotta treat it. It's a lot of learning. Okay, it seems very, it's like, oh, you gotta treat this differently because it's different. It's like, well, you gotta think a little bit about what you learned in journalism school and try to expand that to our realm as well. Try to take the things that you learned about, well, what pictures should you post and should not post on your articles, and what things should you say and shouldn't you say, and what behaviors should be done and shouldn't be done, and those standards apply to you, even if we look ridiculous, all right? Even if we are a little bit weird, all right? We are a little bit weird. We are a little bit ridiculous. We know that. But in these serious incidences, in these serious cases, you really need to take the silliness in the thing and make it a little bit more reserved. I've got silly videos on this channel. I've got silly things. I make silly little jokes at myself and my own expense and other people's expense. But when it comes down to brass tacks, you sometimes got to understand that sometimes you got to take the Joker hat off and be a little bit more somber and a little bit more reserved in the way you behave, because that is what drives professionalism, and that's what drives professional candor. So that's all about my rant on the media and stuff like that during this coverage. Thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. I'm going to get the hop out of here, and thank you very much for watching. I hope you got something out of this. And if the mainstream media is watching, then very much better, because hopefully you guys get better at this coverage. You're getting better. You're getting better, and that deserves applause. That deserves praise. Since I'm picking on little things such as like, well, you shouldn't have used that picture with this article. That's small potatoes compared to what you guys used to do. So thank you for that, and so thank you very much for watching, and see you later.